Welcome to Expats Listen with Ryan and Liz, the podcast where we tell the truth about living abroad, not just the fun, amazing, I'm having a great time on vacation every day, but the reality of a true life that we're building in another country.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Liz. And this week we are talking about a big one. The question is, what is home? When I was 24 and I was backpacking for the very first time, I was staying in this overcrowded hostel in Argentina, and I went to an internet cafe to Skype my mom. That's how long ago this was. We were finishing the conversation and I said, all right, I should get home. I'll talk to you soon. And she said, you're coming home? When? I had just meant that I was going back to the hostel to go to sleep for the night. And she thought that I was going to come home to New York. I had to backtrack really, really quickly. And we had to actually have like another 20-minute conversation where I told her that I loved her and that I missed her, but I was doing this trip and I wasn't leaving and I wasn't quitting and all of this. And that's when I really realized that the word home can mean such different things. So let's get into it. Let's dig in. What is home? Ryan, why don't you tell us what it means to you?
Oh, I don't know. A big part of me hasn't been looking forward to this episode because of how emotional some of the stuff is. So I feel as though it's a warm, safe environment that is characterized by a dwelling, a house that is warm and comfortable and has space for me and has all my favorite things and doesn't change too much and has a faint smell of my mom's cooking, and I am happy there, and my dog is there, and life is calm and tranquil, and that's it. And I think that...
Am I there?
No, but that's the thing. I think it's such a good question because it's actually based in time, not necessarily in concept.
Okay.
So I'm thinking back to my childhood and what I would have idealized at that point and how that imprinted on me going forward through life of being like, what is life? I don't imagine my home right now, including my parents and my brother and the dogs that we had as children. But that was what the concept of home was then because I experienced it in a different way.
Okay.
I was less of a participant in my home at that stage. I was a dependent person on the people who were responsible for running that home. And that was how I experienced it, as opposed to now I'm defining what home is on a day-to-day basis because it's how we live together. And you are my home. I know, we'll probably discuss more of the current concept of home in a second. But yeah, I think it's a lot more idyllic and stereotypical and kind of boring, if I'm honest. And I think that living in a space in time points to the fact that it might be quite antiquated in how I think about it now.
So when you think about the word home now, you're thinking of that childhood definition. You're not thinking of your adult life home.
No, not at all. Because when you say to me, what do you think of home? And that's what the question was. My mind goes back to that point.
Wow.
And I know that I don't live that way. And I know that that's not what my life is right now, despite the fact that my home right now is with you, wherever we happen to be, maybe in Portugal, all of these kinds of things. And how do I feel about where I belong now? But it really does come down to sort of some basic stuff of South Africa. South Africa is home to me. Then further than that, it was either Durban where I was born or East London where I grew up.
Is one of those more home than the other?
You see, that's I think maybe where it does start to get a bit more dynamic for me, because then it starts coming up as being, well, a lot of my extended family were from Durban, and that is where I remember a lot of the best and most warm moments in my life. So I'm a bit confused about that even for myself, right? So that's Durban having more of a homely role than East London did, even when East London was my home in a greater sense. But maybe it's closer to saying that all of these places have been home.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's just so different from how I look at it. And I think for me, home generally is just where I'm sleeping that night, but we have a dog. And Henry is a big part of home. And you, Ryan, are a big part of home to me. So it's wherever we're sleeping that night, if it's all three of us.
Yeah.
Because if all three of us are together and we're in Mars or Uruguay or Mongolia or wherever, we're home.
We are. And that's the thing, is that like there's nowhere else I would rather be than with you and Henry, wherever that might need to be. If I'm down at the shop and you give me a call and you say, when are you coming home? I'd be like, okay, it wouldn't take a long time. I would like sit and like ponder about it, but I would have a second where I would be like, oh, yeah, I'll be back at the apartment in a few minutes. And I would be referring to the apartment that we were staying.
Right.
And I know that you had made the connection that this was home.
Yeah.
But I would have first, at this point in time, thought about, are you asking me when we're going to go back to Portugal? And then if it's not that, then I'm like,
am I asking you when we're going to South Africa?
are you thinking about like when we're going to go? Maybe, no, but not even that. Maybe South Africa, sure. Maybe the United States, maybe New York or Las Vegas. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's what I'm saying, is that it's not necessarily about whether any of those things are true or correct or right.
It's true. There's no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong. But I do cycle through all of those options instead of there just being one.
Yeah, that's really complicated. And I think that's the whole point, right? That when you don't live in the place that you were born, this word becomes really complicated.
And I think that's what it is for me, is moving away from that idealized version of warm, safe, familiar into, as long as I'm close to these people, that is what home actually means. And it's a different feeling to what home felt like when I was 10 years old.
This definitely ties back into homesickness and what we miss about home. Because even though here I am saying that home is wherever I happen to be sleeping tonight, I definitely still feel those homesick feelings. And when I really think about it, what I actually miss is a life that doesn't exist anymore. For example, New York City, when I was 22, was absolute magic. My high school friends and my college friends came together. We expanded our groups. We had all graduated, just got jobs, and were making money for the very first time. We were partying until 6 a.m., grabbing a slice of pizza, and then going straight to the office to work. We had no plans except for each other. So any weekend night, there was a plan with friends. And most weeknights, there was too. I was seeing multiple Broadway shows per month with student tickets or last-minute tickets. I was eating foods that I had never heard of before and falling in love with international cuisine because there was this ridiculous website called restaurant.com that you could get 70% or 90% off at restaurants. And we just went to every restaurant that we could. We also had almost no responsibilities and no idea what we were doing, but our confidence, whoa, the confidence that we felt, like we were on top of the world. And when I tell you that I miss New York City, what I actually miss is that.
Is that missing 22-year-old Liz?
Exactly. That's exactly what it's missing. And when I talk about the Long Island that I miss, it's where my mom was healthy and we went on adventures that always seemed to end with eating Carvel ice cream in the car while I sang every word of every song off key and far too loud. And she laughed at me until I started laughing. And then we both laughed until we cried. And that version of home for me, that's just my mom. Like, what is home? Who is home? It's her. And she's not here. So that version of home, it just doesn't exist for me anymore.
And now?
And now I think That's why it's you guys, right? Because I can't go back to those places. I wouldn't have that experience even if I did. I think, Ryan, you know almost better than anyone that if you wanted me to stay up until 6 a.m. partying, I would be a grumpy monster for maybe 3 days afterward from the lack of sleep. And my mom passed away almost a decade ago now. My friends who saw each other 3, 4, 5 times a week, now they're seeing each other 2, 3 times a year. Life is different. We all have more responsibilities. People have kids, they have ailing parents, they have jobs that have stolen parts of their souls. They also live further away from each other, and an hour and a half on the subway feels a lot longer in your 30s and 40s than it did at 22. So, what am I homesick for? Maybe it's my youth.
I think that makes complete sense. It's who we were at that time. It's how we understood the world around us. I think when I look back at the more practical examples of what do I miss about that home at that time, sometimes you would get home after school or late in the afternoon, maybe after sport or something, and you walk in and your mom's been cooking. And then there's that smell of what was cooking. And I come from a historically and ethnically Indian background, which means that it was probably some type of curry or masala being cooked. And there's a specific smell that you get from the steps of making that curry. So you start off with toasting the spices, then putting ginger and garlic in, and then putting in tomato, and then putting in the meat. And there's a whole recipe to follow in making that. And when you get home, you can smell what was in the pot, and you understood this is how far along that dish was.
And this is how long I need to wait until I can eat it.
And this is how long you would need to wait until dinner was ready. And that was such an incredible feeling to know that that was something that I got to experience when I came home on so many days. It wasn't every day, but it really made me feel like that was what home was like. And even today, if I'm making some kind of curry in our kitchen, one of my favorite things about it, aside from eating it at the end, is the smell of that. And it's really just a fascinating thing because there's so many strange things that trigger those memories of home that don't really exist in day-to-day life anymore other than through almost random exposure. One of the crazy things is I remember when I was a young boy, I watched some silly kids show where they taught you how to make potpourri. And I don't know why, but I felt like I needed to follow that advice, and I went to go make this potpourri. And I used my mom's perfume.
Uh-oh.
And it was a ridiculous amount of perfume. And really everything in the house smelled that way for months. And that particular perfume, today, if I smell even anything similar to it, it takes me all the way back to that particular day.
Making potpourri.
Making potpourri in this house. The smell of the polish that we used on the floors at that time. Coming from South Africa, Liz can attest to this absolutely. If we're driving down the road today and I see someone burning something on a hill far away and I know that we're going to drive past,
he immediately rolls down all the windows.
I will open my windows because I want to smell the smell of that smoke of hopefully what is wood burning, because it was such an important part of what it is that I experienced growing up. And I'm desperate to get that smell, especially when I know that I can get it, you know? And I'm like, oh no, I'll walk past a fire just to smell the smoke because that's what my life used to be.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, we're here in Ireland and we're walking through many sort of fields with animals around it. I had no idea how little time people outside of Africa spent with animals.
Yeah, in New York, 0.
We had that as a very regular experience in South Africa growing up. goats, sheep, cattle, antelope, zebras, giraffes. You would see those on a very regular basis. And since leaving South Africa, I didn't know that other people lived in any other way.
Yeah.
So now when I see cow poop, I have this warm feeling because it takes me back to the days where I used to stand in cow poop all the time. It was a very common thing for me. And living a life where that isn't common to me anymore means that I feel like, wow, home is really far away in terms of time and distance, because that was such a big part of my life at that stage.
And it's not like you're saying you miss standing in cow poop.
No.
You miss the person that you were when you were standing in cow poop all the time.
It was the way life was. It was who I was. It was where I was. It was who I was with. It was just, that was the reality of it. I wasn't imagining any life other than that because that was the only one that I had. And that was how I felt. And I think, yeah, when you look back now at what it is that built that concept of home in our brains, it's such an interesting combination of things. It's certainly the memories of what we did and who was there and what happened. But there's also the songs.
Yeah.
There was also the food. There was also the smells. There was also the textures. Car seats feel different today than how they used to be. So much furniture used to be plastic, and I can feel the stickiness of the plastic on the back of my legs on a summer's day in my grandmother's house. And that was a big part of how I felt home when I used to visit her in the late 90s. And that's, I think, the thing is that maybe I underestimate how much of home is right now because I'm not remembering it. I'm just doing it right now.
I think what you're saying, it's so true that you don't even know that you miss it until you experience it somewhere else. And then you're like, oh, that smell, or wow, that song. When's the last time you heard that song? And you automatically go back there. And I really think that there's something kind of beautiful about those memories and that nostalgia for who we used to be. And I'm so grateful that we get to remember it now.
Oh, they are the best, some of the best memories that we will ever have. And I'm so grateful to have had them as an experience and to have them in my brain as a memory. And I think that's the thing is that, when I talk about home and when we think about it in the context of being expats now, again, it's one of these things that jump out and is so unashamedly complicated. And I think that's kind of beautiful in and of itself, of looking back at things and saying, well, I'm supposed to feel this way. I'm supposed to think this way. This is what home was supposed to be. This is what home is supposed to be now. This is what I'm supposed to build for myself and for my children and for the society and community that I live in. And the thing is that none of this is simple. None of this makes logical sense. None of it fits together in a puzzle piece to create this beautiful picture. It's actually just a series of beautiful but smeared paint stains. That's really what life really is. And I think that's really a fascinating thing, because when we started this conversation and you asked me what do I think home was, even now, after having this conversation, I look back at it and I think it was such a mishmash of different concepts and different memories and different things that I remembered and felt. And maybe that's true today about what my life is right now. And by sitting there and imagining how everything should be in a box and how everything should be prioritized and categorized and valued accordingly, and how different people have a specific role to play, I think that might be a mistake. I think looking at it as a holistic experience of this thing happened to me and that was what my life was might be a bit more comforting, in that maybe we are being too hard on ourselves about needing to be the people who we were supposed to be and experiences in life being what they were supposed to be. You know, one of the things that we do every year is we struggle heavily at Christmas time because we aren't really in a place where we can plug into Christmases that are in any way connected to the Christmases we had as young people.
Yeah.
And so it leaves us in a very difficult situation sometimes where we need to do something for the Christmas season to almost hide from the fact that we don't have homes like we used to anymore.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves doing some of the strangest things. But we have to do those things because that's what home is now. And we can't plug into what home used to be because that doesn't exist anymore.
And I think it's more than just what we do and our traditions and all of that. It's, if you have to say, like, what place is home for you? New York is home for me, yeah. Okay. But my family lives in Vegas, so Vegas is home for me. But I live in Portugal, so Portugal is home for me. But I lived in Sydney for many years, and that still feels like home for me. And I am in Ireland right now, and if you were to ask, like, when are you going home? I'm thinking of the apartment that we're currently staying in, and that's when I'm going home. So the place that I currently am is home for me. And maybe that's it. Maybe home isn't one thing and it's not one place. And I just feel sad if I try to choose, because I can't choose one without not choosing another. And to say that Portugal is definitively my home means that New York isn't anymore.
Well,
And oof.
it's also considering the fact that we might not live in Portugal for the rest of our lives.
We probably won't.
So does it make sense for us to call it home right now? Maybe not. I don't know. I'm just saying that the fluidity of that concept is so off the charts. And I think that when you start living the expat life, I think it's one of the first things that gets pulled out from you like a rug, because it's one of the first times where you sit and you ask yourself, wherever and whenever it might be, where is home? Because you'll ask yourself that question and no one else can answer it for you. And there will be an answer to that. And that answer is really going to go a long way in deciding how you feel about where you are.
And I think that answer is probably going to change, if not every day, every couple of hours even. I think how you're feeling, if you're in a good mood, if you slept well, if you had a good interaction, if your visa is sorted, there are so many ways that make you feel comfortable. And I guess we're talking about home being comfort.
And I think sort of living in that flux of this concept ebbing and flowing and changing shape and feeling more or less intense is such a big part of being an expat. Loving your home where you are and then hating it and then loving it again and then needing to leave and starting again. And man, it is just exhausting and exhilarating and stressful and fun and scary and comforting. And I think that's one of the great things about being an expat and living this life, because I kind of justify the experience to myself by saying, at the end of my life, did I squeeze out as much as I could from the experience? Because if I did, I would need to expect there to have been lots of high highs and unfortunately some terribly low lows. And home, I think, becomes a lot more of an emotional risk because of how much feeling and emotion is attached to it.
Let's hear from a listener. We are lucky enough to have Anastasia, who has given us her thoughts on what is home and what does she miss.
Hi, Liz and Ryan. Thank you so much for inviting your listeners to join the episode. I find every topic you discuss so relatable. So being able to be part of this means a lot. Thank you so much. My name is Anastasia, or as I would say it in my language, Anastasia. But I guess adapting your name for international purposes is a whole different big subject in itself. Speaking about home, I feel I have two homes. I was born in the Soviet Union and grew up in post-Soviet Russia. In my mid-20s, I moved to the UK. My husband's British and we have two kids now. So I've never been a parent. I've never experienced what it is to be a mum in the country where I grew up. So it kind of creates this interesting dynamic. We also lived in Spain for 4 years, and last month we moved to the Netherlands. It's a bit of a mix. So when I think about home, I do think about Russia and I think about the UK. And what makes me miss Russia, and I guess when we talk about a place, we also talk about a particular time that we connect with that place. So most of my brightest memories and attributes, they are connected with my childhood, with growing up. So that would be songs, mostly songs that I used to listen to as a kid. I used to look forward to at a camp dance, something we would play in my house. It's something to dance to, that happy sort of state that I connect, that I attribute to the songs that I used to play. I still have on my Spotify, I still have playlists from the 90s and 2000s that I listen to every now and again if I want to have that feeling. And if we talk about smells, New Year's Eve is huge in Russia because we don't celebrate Christmas the same way as the Western world, so to speak. So New Year's Eve is the biggest night, and usually we make a lot of food. And you might know something that people in Europe often called the Russian salad. Is a salad, a mix of potatoes and cooked vegetables and meat with mayonnaise. So that salad is, to me, that is the smell and the taste of celebration. It means that the house will be happy, will be full of people celebrating something, especially New Year's Eve. So that's one part of that, the home that I associate with my childhood. And my other home, the UK, that I experienced more as a more mature person, I would say that it's British telly. Somebody may say it's not great, but what I love about it is the type of humour that British people have. And, you can't really teach that, or you can't really explain that. You can live it and you can understand that with time. So now, living abroad again, I do miss British television and TV series and programs that they show on BBC. So that's that. Thanks again for having me, and I hope you have a good week. Bye.
I loved that so much. Thank you again so much to Anastasia, however we want to say. But really, I think it's so good to hear from other people. I love that she went straight to places. We didn't go straight to places, but she went straight to places and then brought in the time element. And I think it is so true, right? It's exactly what we were saying, how a place is inextricably tied to the time that you were there.
You could feel how special those things were to her in developing that idea of home. Like, that those are core aspects to who she is as a person, because I think we identify with so much of it, but you can also hear it in her voice. And I really appreciated hearing, because I kind of feel like it's a lot of validation for how it is that we feel, I think like one of the things that stood out for me there, and I think I'd mentioned it earlier about the smell of food cooking. You know, she was talking about the smells. And one of the things that I think about, which was so stupid in retrospect, was my mom used to use this perfume, which was designed, I guess, or the brand was Elizabeth Arden.
Oh.
Right. And I know how fancy that is. But then in my little childhood brain at that stage, I didn't know that Elizabeth Arden was someone who I'd never seen before. So my connection was then to Elizabeth Taylor. So I was like, oh, so that's the lady who makes this perfume. But then the worst thing about it is that it wasn't actually Elizabeth Taylor that I was imagining in my head. It was Liza Minnelli.
So every time your mom sprayed this Elizabeth Arden perfume, you were like, oh, Liza Minnelli loves this.
And even today, when I watch Arrested Development, where she's an actress, I'm like, oh, you know, this lady must smell fantastic.
I also loved what she said about the TV, because it is the weirdest things that stay with you.
Oh, let's talk about this, Liz, because please, I think this is going to cover so many different things that we've talked about in the past, and we probably will talk about going forward, is that the best things aren't always the best things.
Not at all. Sometimes the worst things are the best things.
Really, Kraft mac and cheese for you.
Delicious.
It is not coming out of a chef's kitchen. It is coming out of a box, but the comfort and love that it gives you is not something you can find anywhere else.
Dinty Moore beef stew is a canned soup that my grandma used to have all the time, and we used to have all the time as kids. And eating that can of soup that stays good for decades.
Delicious.
I can't imagine that someone who's never had it before would think that it was good, but I think that it is incredible.
Ugh, you can't underestimate how important those things are. Blue slushy. Blue is not even a flavor, but it is filled with deliciousness. In South Africa, we have an instant coffee brand called Frisco, right? And Frisco, man, I don't mean to offend anyone at the Frisco factory, but I don't even know how much of it is actual coffee, but it is such a comforting drink, filled with the memories of a lifetime before I had moved to Portugal. And I will drink it simply for that fact. It's nowhere near acceptable coffee standards, but the comfort inside that. I know Liz and I sometimes get into arguments because Liz is the main shopper in our relationship. So I will say, hey, listen, can you pick up XYZ at the supermarket when you happen to be there? And she will come back and she'll say, oh, you know what? You asked for noodles. So I got you these noodles, and they will be the fanciest noodles.
Well, I will get whatever's on sale.
Well,
so he asks for lasagna noodles,
yes,
and the
this was an infamous argument that Liz and I had, for real.
So the fresh lasagna noodles were on sale, and they were cheaper than the dried ones. And I was like, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to get him the fresh ones.
Cheaper than the equally cheap bad lasagna noodles. Yes. So this was a race to the bottom. But basically the whole thing was I didn't want the fancy noodles because the fancy noodles are too fancy. They don't taste as crap as the bad noodles do, but I want to taste the crap bad noodles because that's what reminds me of the good days, you know. And I think that's such a common thing to happen. But yeah, Anastasia remarks about the memories that she's got of the different places. Like, you know, she was talking about New Year's. I feel as though like the times that I remember as being the best in my life were times that I didn't expect things to have had such a big impact on me for the rest of my life. There was a New Year's party in 2002 when I was in 11th grade. And it was the best New Year's party I ever went to. I was with my friends. It was near the beach. Amazing party. We didn't drink any alcohol.
I'm sure.
And, we just had the most amazing time. And that's fine because that's young people enjoying a party. But what I found interesting was that was the template that I have chased for New Year's parties since then.
And it'll never live up.
And nothing has ever lived up and nothing ever will live up because it wasn't a case of that party objectively being particularly good. We just had a really good time. And that then imprinted on my brain as being the ideal.
And I think this is another part of what is home. It's these one-off things that happen, that this thing happened and it was incredible. And that feels like a memory that I'm holding on to and home to me. But also, like Anastasia was saying, these things that happen every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing. And it's not, Frisco doesn't taste good to you because you had it once.
Yep.
Frisco tastes good to you because you had it so many times.
Yeah, fair point.
And it's the repetition of these things that just become normal. And that's why we love them so much.
No, that makes sense. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, really incredible. I thank you so much, Anastasia. That really made me think about similar things, that I've gone through in my life. And it's really good to know that I'm not alone in that,
For sure. And I think that's the whole purpose that we wanted to start a podcast in the first place, because there are so many expats and immigrants out there who are experiencing the same things, but not talking about them. And we really wanted to have that place where you could feel like someone gets it.
Yeah. Well,
let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's go.
Are you ready for our Would You Rather home edition?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. Would you rather live in your hometown forever or never be able to visit again?
Well, what is your hometown, Liz?
So I think my hometown would be on Long Island, where I spent most of my childhood.
Okay. And so would you rather never go back or live there forever?
And I think this is such a complicated question for me, because is New York City counted in this? Because if I want to be cheeky about it, I am very happy to never go to Long Island again if I get to go to New York City. But if New York City is included.
No, look, we're not going to do gerrymandering here for you. Long Island is Long Island.
Yeah.
The city is the city.
Yeah.
Would you, so let's limit it reasonably to just Long Island.
Okay. Then if it's just Long Island, then unfortunately I will never visit again.
Do you say that with any kind of concern about what people might say about not wanting to stay there? Because we both have people in our lives who have stayed in our hometowns.
I think that we were talking earlier about a place that you feel comfortable in. And my family was incredible. My family is incredible. And I have fantastic friends in Long Island. And there's so many people there that I truly, truly love. But I never felt comfortable in that place. I never felt like I belonged. I think that I always knew that this place fit me like an itchy sweater. And
I also think further than that is that anyone whose opinion you really do care for would say, we don't want you to feel that way.
Yeah. And I think that if I'm allowed to go to New York City, I'm thrilled to see them all and hang out in New York City. It's not so far. And yeah, I think that's just a place that I always felt more comfortable in.
For sure. Yeah.
And you?
So East London, South Africa is my hometown, I would say. That's where I grew up. It's where I spent most of my time as a young person. And I think that East London probably saw enough of me. I saw enough of East London. And I think if I can't go back again, I would accept it. At some point in time, I would love to go back because, of the memories that were there and people who are still there. But I also feel as though my time there has come and gone, and I don't think that it's really a statement on whether or not it's a good place or a nice place filled with nice people.
No, not at all.
Not at all. It's just I don't fit in there anymore. I don't think I'm that person. Even if I did need to go back to South Africa, I probably wouldn't go back to East London just because I feel like I'm a different person that doesn't fit in there anymore. And I think that that's okay.
All right. Would you rather live in a city that feels like home, but a house that's very uncomfortable, or a house that feels like home in a city that's very uncomfortable? And this is interesting because in this whole discussion about what is home, we didn't really talk much about the house. You did a little bit about that feeling of comfort and warmth, but we didn't really talk much about the house being part of what home is. So what do you choose here?
You know, it's a really good question. And to be honest with you, I think I would have had a really good answer for this before COVID.
Wow.
Because I think when COVID came around, it really snapped me a little bit in terms of understanding how important it is to live in a place that you're actually comfortable. Because I really looked at a lot of our friends and family who live a different kind of lifestyle where they would really use the place that they're living, their dwelling, let's call it that, their house, as really just a base to sleep and eat, basically.
Yeah.
And then the rest of their lives were at work or in other activities and places. But then the second COVID came around, those people were stuck inside those houses. And I could tell that a lot of them were really not comfortable in the place that they were staying. And it's not it's not a judgment thing. It's just, well, you didn't plan for that because no one planned for any COVID stuff to happen.
Of course.
So now they were all of a sudden in like some of our friends in New York who live in tiny apartments.
Yeah.
Are like, well, now we are spending 24 hours a day in a tiny, tiny apartment. And they didn't get that apartment to spend 24 hours a day in it.
No one lives in New York City to spend time in their apartment.
Exactly. And so that really sort of, blew me away of thinking, well, how much more important is it for me to live in a place where I'm comfortable? And so, in terms of answering the question here, I would say, and again, like maybe linking to the rest of the podcast, is maybe having a comfortable house might be more important to me, because I feel as though if you, me, and Henry are happy together and we're comfortable where we are right now, then I can deal with an uncomfortable city. That's my base.
Wow. So I feel the exact opposite. I am going with the comfortable city, and I am fine to be in a tiny, uncomfortable apartment. I also just think I don't mind a tiny, uncomfortable apartment nearly as much as you do.
Well, I think a big part of it is that you do spend a lot more of your time outside of the house, like going on adventures and activities and stuff. And I am naturally a lot more of an introverted person who enjoys spending time inside and reading and learning and doing interesting stuff, on my own.
Yeah.
So, I think that makes sense for sure. Oh, okay. Next
last
one.
Okay, last one. Would you rather hear a song that transports you back to childhood every day, or smell something that transports you back to childhood every day? And remember, this is going to happen every single day. So are you going to hear something that brings you back to childhood every day, or are you going to smell something?
Is it the same song or the same smell, or is it like different smells?
No, it could be
songs?
different smells, different songs, but something that instantly takes you back to childhood. It's either a sound or a smell. It's going to happen every day.
Oh, you go first on this one.
So I'm going smell.
Okay.
Because I think that, no, I'm changing it. I'm going song. So first I was going to say I'm going smell because I didn't want that like distraction of the song. But I'm trying to think of like what all of the smells are that are going to take me back to childhood. And I can't think of nearly as many as songs. I can think of so many songs that would take me straight back to the 90s. And I think that could be really fun. Even though it would be a bit more disruptive to the day, I think the smell would be more subtle and maybe easier for an everyday thing. I think the sound...
What do you mean disruptive? What is going to happen to you after you hear the song? Are you going to zone out for the length of the song?
I'm definitely going to sing along. You've met me. I sing along to every song.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the diversity of songs is greater that would be able to transport me back to childhood than the diversity of smells.
Okay, so here's the other thing that I'm going to ask you about this, right? And I think this is a good question. So when you talk about those songs, that's fine. But how many of those songs are going to transport you back to painful memories? Or
Just
difficult?
There's one song. It's called Fight Song
Eesh.
by, I don't even know her name.
Rachel Platten, if I'm not mistaken.
Rachel Platten. Rachel Platten. And when my mom was first diagnosed with cancer, that song came out. And she was on like the Today Show or something like that. And she told her story of she was diagnosed with cancer and she got better and she's fully cancer free now. And this is her song. And I'm getting emotional, but I need a second.
We've got all the time, my love.
But I would sing that song in the car by myself at the top of my lungs, really thinking that my mom would get better too. And she didn't. So I can't listen to it ever again. Because even talking about that song, it's too much for me. That's the only song I can think of that makes me feel that way. It's that song. Like you talk about like what songs have bad memories. That song. I cannot handle that song. If it's on in a store, I walk out. If it's on anywhere, like I cannot listen to that song.
I'm super glad that song isn't around anymore. I didn't share the same experience with anyone who passed away from cancer the same way that you had, but I really have always questioned very strongly that concept of fighting cancer.
Yeah.
There used to be a huge ad campaign in South Africa. I don't know, people of a certain age might remember it, where that was the theme of it, fighting cancer. And I remember, even as a young kid, thinking, so did all of the people who passed away from this, they didn't fight? That doesn't make any sense to me.
They didn't try hard enough.
They didn't try hard enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I kind of don't understand that, because it's the same thing as, I don't know, having a heart attack and being like, oh, so you didn't try hard enough to overcome that. Did you not squeeze hard enough and you to survive this? And like, that's how my dad died.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he was lying on the ground thinking, oh, I should make a bit more of an effort.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really a terrible thing, that we've actually created. I don't think that there was any thought behind that marketing spiel, to be honest, to create that. But yeah, well, at least it's only one song.
Exactly. So I think I've got a lot of good memory songs to choose from.
And here's the thing. I'm going to be brave, Liz, and I'm going to say smells.
Okay.
Because, I feel as though, like, obviously, even today, I mean, for both of us, we have memories associated to songs, right? And that's cool. And I think that's fine. But I feel as though that when I get smells, I feel almost closer to that memory.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know how my brain is wired for that to be the reality. But when I get that smell, I have this like pretty, I don't know, almost like sci-fi kind of reaction to it, of being in that time and place again. And like I was saying, I think I alluded to it a couple of times in this podcast, of remembering, the smell of the cooking, remembering the smell of the perfume
And the fire.
and the smell of the fire and the car poop and stuff like that. But, I remember some of my favorite memories in my life were in India. And man, India is wild for smells,
Yes.
right? India, man, like your olfactory nerve is working overtime there. And what I loved so much about it was the extreme nature of everything, where you would be walking down a road and you would smell the most delicious food cooking in the world ever of all time, kind of thing. Like, you're like a cartoon character, like floating in the air. And then like 2 meters further down the road is like raw sewage and like just, the worst smells that humanity could create. They're in your nostrils too. And the thing though, I think for me, is just that extreme swing of the good and the bad. and the memories associated with them, I kind of feel a little bit of a rush, being like, what's the dice going to show in terms of your flashback today? You know, so it might be sewage, or it might be a delicious biryani, you know, and and I think I'm willing to roll those dice
Because you're happy either way.
I think so. You know, you're living. You know. But anyway, that was really our episode for this week. And it was the concept of what is home? Where is home? Who is home? And I want to thank you all for joining us in this discussion and this topic. And we really went through a lot in it. And I really am glad that we had this opportunity to share this with you. We want to say thank you again to Anastasia for sending through her thoughts and feelings. It was really good to hear. And to know that there's someone else who feels so similarly to us. And also thank you for sharing those special moments with us as listeners. And if you've got anything that you want to share, anything that you want to talk about, please reach out to us. We're on Expats Listen on Instagram, or you can email us on expatslisten@gmail.com. Reach out. Make some contact with us. We will be able to tell you about what's happening in our next episode. We can chat around it, and you can tell us what you think about whatever it is that we're going to be talking about in our next episode. We'd love to share with you the same way we did this week. And until then, we're sending you all of our best. Goodbye.